Hey everyone, good morning. Doug here from 2 Plus Tough, and we're hanging out and we are chatting all about the big previews that came out from Games Workshop today. So friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me and for taking the time to watch this with me. Basically, a few other YouTubers have already jumped on this train as far as getting their videos out. Vince Ventrella just finished his. I wanted to wait until he was done because, quite frankly, I didn't want to steal his ideas by, watching it and then doing my own thing. And also, amateur hour is important, and we need to support the small YouTube channels. And so letting, Vince Ventrella kind of get an edge in, it's just a nice guy thing that I do. I'm totally messing around. Vince is an awesome guy, and I poke fun whenever I can. So, here we go. I'm going to assume that everything is good to go. If you've never done one of these before with me, basically the way that I do these reviews, it's mainly oriented for folks who can't, they have jobs or something like that, or they can't stop what they're doing to just sit and read the article. And so I first go through and I read the important things, obviously focusing mostly on AOS and Warcry, or anything in the AOS universe, so Underworlds, that kind of stuff. And then we're going to pause, answer any questions based on those articles, that kind of stuff, and then we'll kind of talk about what I think, you know what I mean, as far as like an actual review. So we get the information out there, and then we review it. So I already see some folks hopping into the chat. Thank you all so much. And Spezia, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. So what we're going to do is hop right in. I'm just getting my screen all set up and locked. And here we go. So, got a lot of interaction today. Hello, everybody. Spezia for the win. Spezia, tell me what your favorite thing is that we're talking about today. So the preview started off at 6 a.m. and I promised myself I wasn't going to wake up early for it. But then my body was like, yeah, you are. And I just kind of randomly woke up. There was a bunch of stuff for the Horus Heresy series, which is really cool. Horus Heresy is one of those things that, I don't see people playing it a lot, locally. I mean, obviously no one's playing anything right now. But it just never gripped me enough to get into it. Got a sweet model of a Primarch. I think that's Lionel Johnson. Yep. And these are Night Lords. So we're going to kind of breeze past here because I don't know enough, Honestly, the most excitement I have for the Horus Heresy series, Horus Heresy series, my God, is the podcast Independent Characters is a phenomenal 40K podcast, very encouraging, very well put together and that kind of stuff. And when they do breakdowns of these bigger Horus Heresy books, it's just fantastic. I absolutely love their breakdown. So I'm actually more excited for a podcast's review of the book than I am going to go out and buy it. So that is what it is. We're going to move right along here to Necromunda, which, as many of you know, I love Necromunda. It is my favorite. I don't know if it's my favorite skirmish game, but it's up there. It's definitely, as far as the most complex one that is still fun, it is definitely up there. And so we knew for a while here that they were going to be basically making a book for each of the factions. They've already done Goliath. Escher should be coming out. I think it goes on pre-order this weekend or next weekend. And then they have House of Iron, which, if you've been watching the channel, you know that I painted up some Orlok, which is the House of Iron gang for my buddy Ben. And it's kind of a Mad Max style. They're sort of the jack of all trades, masters of none. Love having jetpacks and stuff. And so they've got some sweet new models. And honestly, even if you're not into Necromunda, when you look at their models specifically, they just look amazing for conversions, because everything about Necromunda is so low tech that if you're looking, I say low tech, it's sci-fi, but everything looks very worn and very crude. And so it actually, a lot of these things can work really well in a fantasy setting if you're doing bit swaps and that kind of stuff, keeping it pretty simple. So here we have some awesome pictures. This guy has 2 power fists and a hammer, which is amazing. He's got an exosuit type thing, I'm sure for mining purposes. So there's the 2 of those. Then it looks like they have some kind of jetpack unit, but none of them are actually flying, so I don't think it's a jetpack. Swiftly get around the battlefield, though not without degree. Yeah, they're a jump booster. They're not like a perpetually flying unit, but they can hop. And then we come to my favorite model of this new set, and that is there's a pair of doggos. Now, I'm going to pause here. Again, I've talked about how... I'm trying to think how to word this. I keep seeing 40k models be released in these big release events. The last one was for LVO, I think, where we got the preview of the Adeptus Mechanicus guys on like mechanical horses. My point being that every time they release something for 40k, I look at it, I'm like, man, I want to just strap a bunch of cogs and like piping on it and make a Cities of Sigmar mechanical based army. Like a Cities of Sigmar army where Demigryph Knights are riding the mechanical horses. Here we have mechanical doggos. I'm not sure what I would use them as because I don't recall any dog unit in Cities, but yeah, absolutely love the dogs here, and it wouldn't take much to convert them to be anything you want. Again, you know, there are pistons and cogs and that kind of stuff, but there's not a ton of like super intense sci-fi bits, so they'll work for quite a few things. Now, moving on here, we have some new 40k stuff, like a new Necron guy. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not really paying attention to 40k right now, and it's mainly to keep my my brain stress levels to a minimum. Not because it's like a negative experience. It's just there's so much to learn. The game is changing rapidly. There's so many new models. The new codexes aren't even out until October, so I just need to let it sit before I really start investigating further. So this is a really cool looking model, though. I will be honest. I love him. I love the helmet actually, where it's the white over the Necron skull. So that would be really, really awesome. Now, here is something that actively interests me, and I hope that it interests you too. So, like I said, I'm just kind of holding off on 40k, but this is an interesting thing. So it's called Lifting the Veil. It is a Warhammer 40k Crusade supplement. Now, Crusade is kind of their take on Path to Glory, where it's less focused on a hero, you know, reaching the highest echelon of chaos, and more of it's a narrative army builder where you just, you know, your army as a whole grows and gains experience and abilities and stuff over time. It's honestly kind of what I desperately want, if I'm perfectly frank with you. And the reason I stop and look at this is because this is a supplement that really supports that very specific kind of playstyle. And I hope that we get one as well in AOS. You know, it's a mission pack, so I'm sure it's not very big. I'm sure it's probably not vastly in size-wise different from the Path to Glory book that came out for AOS. However, AOS was in a very different place when the Path to Glory book dropped, for sure. And so I think they've learned a lot, and this could be a much more refined and interesting version, to be perfectly frank. So I would absolutely love this same kind of supplement. Now, there's an interesting thing down here. Oh, we got a new terrain set, Vertigus. Vertigus is a collection of, looks like a couple half ruins and a boatload of pipes. So if you were thinking to yourself, my God, this is just an unrealistic game, because in real life we fight over pipes like men and women. And you know what? Bam, you're in luck. And here's it's a battlefield in a box, which I kind of like. And then, yeah, they got some cool new terrain stuff there. Now, one thing that I found interesting, and I'm curious, every time they release something that's a new type of content for either 40k or AOS, I always want to stop and look at it, because they do not reuse, but they kind of like transfer ideas from one game to the next, because reuse doesn't quite work because they don't operate the same in terms of like game engines. But here we go. So this says, as you build your scenery collection, you'll want new ways to use it in your games, and the chapter approved mission pack tactical deployment is a great way to do so. So this is an interesting one that I'm interested to see if they bring it over to AOS. This pack contains 18 new matched play missions, which allow you to bring your own themed terrain and use it to create balanced battlefields alongside your opponent for close-fought games. This is perfect for any Warhammer 40,000 player who wants to add a new element to their battles. It also makes it much easier for event organizers and clubs to run tournaments. No need to paint 500 ruins to populate the tables. Run a tactical deployment event, provide tables and a roof, and the participants will bring the rest. That is a lofty promise. And I when I look at this, I'm like, okay, this seems to be a product that is directed towards folks who maybe have who want to have a small one-day event, like really simple. Hey, here's how you can set up games to be able to, manage things really, really easily. It's kind of takes a lot of the decision making off of you as a presumably new TO or new to tournament organization. And I like it. I mean, I like it in theory. Like, I love the idea of Games Workshop saying, like, this is the kind of community-focused thing that we want to encourage, just as much as we encourage the large events like Nova and LVO, but, like, getting to the core of your local store, having, getting rid of any kind of barrier to entry for people to get together and just play games and get other people into the hobby. I think that is phenomenal. How well it will do that, I don't know. Like I said, 40K is in a strange place right now. They have a lot of information coming at them as far as new codexes and the new edition dropped and kind of understanding list building and that kind of stuff. One thing I'm curious about is if chapter approved tactical deployment will be like a supplement for missions and that kind of stuff, whereas chapter approved presumably something else will have something else to offer in terms of like narrative rules and that kind of stuff, kind of how we would have our GHB. So I don't know, or I could be misunderstanding it altogether and it's going to be bundled in with the regular chapter approved. I don't quite know. Nothing says both these mission packs and loads of scenery will be available soon. So nothing quite says that, but I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I'm trying to think what people would think, and you guys throw it in the chat. If they came out with a separate book for AOS that was missions, but not just missions, but missions and resources for tournament organizers locally to have small events run smoothly. I think it would be a big bonus for the community, and every group would want to have this book, but not every player, right? I think that makes sense, depending on its price, though. So, I don't know. I just wanted to point that out because that kind of stuff is what really interests me when it comes to the cross-pollination of 40K and AOS. So now, I'm actually going to start reading the articles for those of you who are driving, because we move into Warcry. Now, Warcry is set in the Immortal Realms, and I love it. So, the Bloodwind Spoil is a brutal and bloody place where war rages almost non-stop. Now, it's time to delve beneath those ravaged lands and take your narrative warband's battles to a new level that will explore the fascinating setting of the 8 points in a whole new way. And they have this awesome comic. It's basically a cartoon of the Sparta kick, "This is Sparta," and this is Warcry. I love it so much. Cry Catacombs is the new Warcry starter set, okay? It's an amazing new box set that allows you to battle in an underground dungeons beneath Archaon's mighty Varanspire lair, complete with lava. It's packed with amazing scenery that lets you recreate the perilous environments below the 8 points, with doorways, bridges, shattered pillars, and more. It's like a mix of Warhammer Quest and Chaos Fortresses. In other words, terrifying and glorious. So I love it. And here's a picture on the front. And as we'll get to in just a hot sec, the factions involved. So, of course, in the original Warcry set, it was pretty much a generic place in the 8 points. And your warbands, you had the Untamed Beasts and the... I can't think of their name. Iron Golems. Okay? Both very cool factions. My only criticism of the original set was that I feel like the two factions they included were different forms of melee, and I wish they had included something else, like, say, Corvus Cabal, or, just something else that uses different mechanics. They were very samey in their approach. So, That was my only criticism of that entire set. I loved that freaking set of models. My goodness. Now, this is also the time where they debuted the... Actually, I'm going to go from one end and start here. I'll pull these up. Okay, there we go. That is the end. So, this is the Shadow Elves side of things. Now, these are directly working for Morathi. These are the elves of the Cainite Shadow Stalkers. So think of it as like Morathi's personal like police force or something like that. And we have some incredible dark elf sculpts that put, frankly, anything in the old world range to shame. Now, the fact that they are shadow magic makes this character on the screen right now the only person in the mortal realms who has literally thrown shade at somebody else. And if you're driving, you can't look at it. Basically, it's he's a spellcaster and he's shooting a bolt spell at somebody else. But yeah, that's my interpretation of his use of shadow magic. And I sincerely hope that there is a rule, like they have a special ability or something like that, that's just literally called throw shade. That would be incredible, quite frankly. We have some awesome witch elf looking models. Stuart asks, so what is Morathi doing in the 8 points? My friend, we have stuff to talk about in the future here, so just hold tight. Yeah, and what's interesting is so Daughters of Cain, their original base is in the realm of Shadow. However, they've since they have enclaves all over the place. But what I find interesting is this is decidedly a Daughters of Cain warband. However, their appearance is very like shadow magic-y, or what I would assume that's going to be. And so I wonder if this warband visually is like a perfect in-between of Daughters of Cain and whatever Malarian's Shadow Elves will be. I would not be surprised if we saw elements, especially like the cloaks and how they fade into mist, that kind of stuff, make its way over to the main faction for Malarian. So that's just kind of something I'm looking at and kind of keep it in the back of my mind. MVP of this entire set is this guy who's rocking around with 2 repeating crossbows because he is the sexiest man alive. He is Antonio Banderas in Desperado or whatever. So there's that one. And of course, we've seen these guys before, so I'm going to keep it kind of light. But the other faction in there is the Scions of the Flame. And now, I do wonder what the thought process... so when they made the original set, and they came out with the original Warcry book, the Scions of the Flame were in there. We didn't have models for them, obviously. We didn't know a lot about them, or their abilities, that kind of stuff. But they have, a narrative quest and that kind of thing, and, a name generator and all this stuff. I think they have a name generator in there. But they have all this support. And so my question is, I'm very curious as to if this was always the plan. To have this, seed of something that was going to be in the next set. Or if they were just, the development for them was too far out. So it's we'll throw their stuff in the book. But we're not quite sure what we're going to do with the actual, models. And then they decided, we're going to put it in the next box set that we put out. So that's an interesting idea to me, but like I said very briefly, they have sort of the aesthetics are all over the place, because one guy looks like he is a straight up Shogun fireballer, and I love him. I definitely want to find a use to convert this model for my Nurgle army, without question. I'll put some Nurgle icons on his back, give him a grosser head, but his stance, that power stance with the fire coming out, my goodness, it looks incredible. That guy looks sweet. I'm just kind of browsing through here. Like I said, we've already covered these guys in detail, so I'm not going to go into too much. I'm just kind of pointing out things that really stand out to me. This model on the screen right now, from the little lore blurb that we got the last time they showed us this, basically he takes fire magic into himself and it consumes him. And so he's going Super Saiyan is what we're seeing of him erupting in flames and stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of them. Now moving on, I'm going to keep reading the article here for you. This is a great way to start playing Warcry and includes the core book, awesome, as well as a brand new set of rules for fighting dungeon battles. we're going to come back to that in my review, so I'm just going to read it as it is. Alongside these are a host of campaigns for your warbands to embark upon with suitably epic rewards. Of course, all your existing warbands can take to the Catacombs for a fresh challenge too, and the 2 new warbands can be used in your games of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, which, you know, all these things have war scrolls for AOS, but they're very clunky and awkward because they're different kinds of models in the same unit. It's a little weird, but it is what it is. The terrain mixes a classic fantasy dungeon aesthetic with the distinctive look of the Mortal Realms, with doors to hide behind, bridges to traverse, and much more. If you're a coward who's scared of lava, you can also flip the board and use some of the other terrain for more traditional 8-point style Warcry games. So I'm going to blow up this picture here of, this is now supposedly the dungeon of the Varanspire. Now, when I look at this, again, we're going to come back and do like a fuller review of stuff in a bit here. I think, this is just my spitball, the dungeon format is really meant to appeal to people who love Warcry aesthetically and the size of the game and the scale of it and that kind of stuff, but they just want more crunch. Which, I mean, I'm amongst them. There's nothing wrong with that. I want more crunch and more rules, because rules let you articulate different effects. You know what I mean? So, like, I hope that there's a really good rule set for setting people on fire and what that does to them and means for them. If you're going to have a faction where there's a dude who, like, is actively erupting in flame. That kind of stuff. So I think it's super interesting. Honestly, it really reminds me of, if you remember, when Kill Team dropped, they dropped with a great big set that had a whole bunch of 3-dimensional terrain, meaning there's elevation and that kind of stuff. But then their tournament version, their supplement that made it, that was a focus on balance and quick and easy matches, they kind of got rid of the 3-dimensional element and kind of went to something like this, where there's doorways and passageways and that kind of stuff. And I wonder if this is that. And if so, I'm all for it. I'm all for more ways to play. Again, if they tighten up the rule set and kind of add more flavorful rules, I would be so into that. I'm very excited for this. I can't stress enough. Also, insert all of the floor is lava jokes. It's going to be awesome. Give me 1 second here. My cat's trying to break down my door. He'll like paw at it, screaming, "Let me in!" And the second I open the door, he's just like, just kidding. It's kind of boring in here. You're just talking about nerd stuff. So anyway, I really love this set, obviously. And now I'm looking at this, and I notice a few things. Not only is there the doors and the corridors and that kind of stuff, there's actually not a ton of terrain on this thing. What's more interesting to me is like some of these scatter bits look exceptional. So if you, I can't really like zoom in I can't zoom in too far anymore, but basically this is kind of looks like the Sigmarite weapons and shields and that kind of stuff that used to be like I guess it still is, but like a objective marker in that narrative set of objective markers. Then you have a crypt over here on the top left, and just some cool looking rubble. Like I think they're great little additions. So yeah, that is my thoughts on that. We'll come back for the review later. Where was the second picture? Here we go. So yeah, there we go. And there is kind of a thematic picture that combines all these elements. Of course, you can see the different archways. You got some coffins. I think this is legit. You are going to see a lot of those doorways show up prominently in display boards. I can already tell you. Like they just look stellar. And I'm excited for it. I'm ready for it. So let's see here. And then one thing I'm a little bit perplexed on, and I'm going to keep reading the article here because I think I missed some words. If you're a coward who's scared of lava, you can also flip the board and use some of the other terrain for a more traditional 8-point style war game. So it does come with some terrain. It's not the full set of terrain from the original Warcry is my understanding. However, it is, 2 buildings, the watchtower, as well as all the doorways and that kind of stuff for the other format, which when you combine that and all the scatter terrain and the warbands, that's a lot of stuff. When you combine all of this, the bridges for sure. The bridges look 3-dimensional. They look like a model. They're not drawn on the thing, I don't think. So, interesting stuff. Very excited about the set. Now we're going to move into my least favorite thing that Games Workshop does, which is not previews. And essentially, the next season of Warhammer Underworlds is called the Direchasm. And I know what was going to happen, but Games Workshop didn't seem to think that people weren't going to fill their Twitch stream with all kinds of crude jokes regarding the term Direchasm. And I don't know how they didn't see that coming, but to each their own. I would also like to live in a world of blissful ignorance, but here we are together in 2020. And basically, when I say it's my least favorite kind of thing, they give you some silhouettes of models without confirming much. You see some cards. There's clearly Lumineth Realm Lords. There's our Oxen head guy. And the Direchasm box set contains everything you need to play, including 2 brand new warbrands representing the darkness and light of the mortal realms. The Slaaneshi Hedonites of the Dread Pageant, which is the best name for a warband from Slaanesh, entered the living mountain in search of Slaanesh, and now revel in the sensation of endless slaughter, death, and rebirth. Ranged against them are Maiaris? I don't know what they are. Purifiers, a band of Lumineth Realm Lords pledged to calm the mountain's growing wrath. Now, I have 2 big thoughts here, and I want to save them for later. One is extremely positive and one is extremely negative, and you'll get to it. I'll explain here in a sec. But one of the things that the hosts of the Warhammer show did say... let me get that out of the way. Thank you. Said to approve a comment here. Sorry about that. One of the things that they did say was that every season typically has 6 warbands associated with it. And so one of the ones that did preview, because it was the most requested thing, was a skink. Or there's at least going to be a Seraphon warband. A skink from it. Whether it's going to be all skinks or not, cannot say. But yeah. So that's kind of a cool thing. I mean, I like this. I would take this over a rumor engine any day of the week. You know what I mean? Like every couple of months, just say, hey, you guys, you really want something? Hey, here it's coming. Here's a model from that set. And let us just get excited about it rather than like giving me a little 4x4 picture of the tip of the flute or something like that. Like, no, show me the dang model. Seraphon players should be excited and wish listing, and I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm happy for him, is what I'm saying, and I want GW to do more of it. Next up is a supplement for Underworlds called Arena of Death. And essentially what this is, I'll read the blurb, I promised I would. So when a one-on-one clash just won't do, the Arena Mortis awaits. Grab a single fighter and face off against between 2 and 5 other players in a fast-paced and brutal hunt for glory. I am really tempted to try this format. Now, the main reason is I want to know how they kept it hero-centric and made the heroes... Because, I mean, not all heroes... Like, if you pick one of the Gloomspite Gits Warbands ones, they're just going to die. You know? So there has to be some mechanics built in here to, like, give even individual heroes a fun game. And so I think that's really, really cool. I still have my... Great Bray Shaman from the Beastgrave set. I love that model. I converted him to match my Maggotkin. So, you know, GW, I got the stuff for it. Sell me on it. Make me fall in love with it. Expanding on the rules first presented in White Dwarf, Arena Mortis contains everything you need to use your existing fighters in thrilling multiplayer clashes. You'll build power decks and battle to death with a single fighter and beyond, as the only way to gain glory is through kills, and no warrior stays dead for long. Okay, so Yeah, it's a pit where people come back to life. That's interesting. I like it. The double-sided board is perfect for Arena Mortis and can be used in any Warhammer Underworlds game. Likewise, the 40 new Universal Power cards, 20 Gambit, 20 Upgrade, will shake up your decks in every play format. I want to like Underworlds so much. It seems like it was made for me. I just don't care for the deck building aspect. Daggum. You know what I mean? Like, I love the small games. I love how fast it is. It just, everything screams Doug, except for the deck building, which is like half the flippin' game. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Now we're going to move into the big stuff. The big stuff that I'm very excited for, and that is Warhammer Age of Sigmar, the full game, not Warcry, not set in its setting. It's the actual game. We got a preview. Well, actually, I'll read the thing here. Since the Age of Myth, the elves have, on the whole, taken little interest in the great events ravaging the mortal realms. These inscrutable beings have focused on their own agenda, like the imprisonment of a certain chaos god. But now, war comes to them, and the rivalry between their ancient race and the followers of Slaanesh is kicking it up a notch. So, dang, let's see. In Shadow and Pain, the Hedonites have invaded the realm of shadows in search of their dark master, and they bring, well, pain. You probably got that from the title. And so what it is Daughters of Cain versus Slaanesh. And essentially, let me see if we have... I'm just looking ahead to see what models they have pictures of. But this is essentially the set where you have our first real Slaanesh Chaos Lord. And when I say real, there was the Slaanesh Chaos Lord that used to be Sigvald or whatever his name was, the pretty boy. But I feel like a full-blown AOS-ified version of their new vision of what Slaves to Darkness and Chaos armies are. So we'll show pictures of him all zoomed in here in a sec, but I think that is probably the defining feature. It's the only new model for Slaanesh to my knowledge, because along with him, you get 10 Demonettes, 2 sets of the mortals on the Slaanesh mounts. I think they're called Hellstriders or something like that. And then there is the Flesh Mower up above, which is the Demonettes on the big thrashing machine. Now, to the other side, the Daughters of Cain, we have a new hero, which we'll talk about in a sec. We have a new unit of Snake Ladies, an existing unit of Snake Ladies who have the bows, and then the Kineri, to answer a question in the comment, those are existing models. They're just one of the variants of them. There's 2 types of Kineri. And so here are pictures of the Slaanesh Lord, and he looks awesome. He looks mean, but he doesn't look overdone, and I think that's kind of the biggest thing for me. Is normally with Slaanesh, when I typically find when people do a lot of conversions for Slaanesh, they go super overboard, and I truly believe less is more when it comes to conversions and that kind of stuff. But you have some fantastic little things, the boots are completely normal except for this little metal tip that curves inwards and makes a spike kind of a thing. There's his belt buckle, which is a giant maw. Even just his weapon is just a big blunt mace instead of a delicate, sword mastery, that kind of thing. He looks like he's there to chew bubblegum and kill stormcasts, and the man has not had bubblegum in 1,000 years. I love him. He is cool. If this is their vision for Mortal Slaanesh, I'm in 110%. Here's some cool pictures of his back. I love the armor. One of the things I can say about G-Dub's latest renditions of Chaos, and that's Slaves to Darkness stuff, those new models that came out, as well as this, I think they're really learning how much space or trim to put on their armor. They have the gold trim lining black armor typically for Slaves to Darkness. I've just noticed more and more they have these bigger spaces where the main color shows through, because they used to be extremely busy with all the trim. And yeah, No, I think they're nailing it. They're crushing it. He's got this big old spike on his back that curves up. It looks very Slaanesh-y, without being like honestly too ridiculous. Like I said, it's not too much. So I like him quite a bit. And moving on to the next side here is like leading the Daughters of Cain is a Melusai Iron Scale. So it's a new hero, crafted from the most vengeful souls among all the elves. This elite war leader is resistant to hostile magics and can channel Morathi's might to turn foes into immobile but fully conscious crystal statues. In your game, that means enemies need to be aware mortal wounds. So that's cool. I think just by that description, like if Morathi is Dr. Evil, this sounds like Mini-Me, where it's just like just a smaller version. I mean, she's even coiling around a pillar like Morathi is. Maybe I got that wrong. Maybe she's the only new model. Someone correct me in the chat. I'm going to pull that picture back up. I see it now, actually. So there's not a new unit of Melusai. She is a new Melusai leader, but the core unit is the same. So it's an existing one. So anyway, I see that now. No one said anything in the chat. I don't think so. Maybe I missed it. But anyway, she looks rad. She's got some great looking, like the scale detail is awesome. I really do hope that like the edges of each of those scales is as deep and defined as it looks in this picture, because that would make painting it so much easier. She's the only new one. Okay, thank you so much, Kendall. I appreciate it. As well as loads of other lovely models, the box includes rules and lore for everything inside, making it a perfect way to start exploring both the Daughters of Cain and the Hedonites of Slaanesh. The story of Shadow and Pain is also a prequel to the next big event to hit the mortal realms. Gods will rise, the elves will march, and the realms will break. So we're going to pause here for a hot sec, and I'm just going to straight up say it. So I never know if Games Workshop is going to send me any of these things. I really can't imagine they're going to send me this one, because the two heroes are the only one thing that's new. And typically when they've released these kinds of sets like Loon Curse and that kind of stuff, they haven't. I'm putting a bounty out there. If you want to help the channel, at least send me a picture of all the lore in there, because I want I want that booklet so much, but whatever. And the last thing here is Broken Realms. Also, I want to pause here. The fact that a box set has meaningful lore in it that builds to the next thing makes me so freaking happy, because I really wanted to do a lore thing for whatever it was called, the Skaven and Flesh Eater Courts box, but there was like nothing there. And I even looked at the lore for Blight War, and it was just so shallow. So the idea, that little line of just like, hey, this is setting up more important things, that just really appeals to me. Like, honestly, that makes this box more appealing to me than the Flesh Eater Court and Skaven one. Broken Realms. Now, this is our big story here, so I'm just going to read it. The Realmgate Wars. Malign Portents, the Soul Wars, Wrath of the Everchosen. The vast ongoing story of the mortal realms has encompassed many great events. To break it down, the Stormcast Eternals ushered in the Age of Sigmar, driving back the hordes of chaos and allowing civilization to return to the realms in the form of great cities. Nagash raised hordes of the dead to claim the realms for himself. Ancient storm vaults full of long-buried secrets were opened, and most recently, chaos and death have been knocking chunks out of one another in the 8 points. That is probably the best summation of all the junk that's gone down. I love it. Now it's time for the next chapter. Thank God. A narrative event that will define the future of Age of Sigmar. Broken Realms is here. Now, if you're driving, I'm sorry, come back and visit this page afterwards. The artwork here is astounding. It's this great combination of like almost impressionism and more traditional fantasy style art, where we don't, you know what I mean? Like Morathi is just going nuts up here, and it's Morathi versus the Deepkin. Holy crap, that's cool. Next set looks like Slaanesh. There's broken chains coming off of Slaanesh. One of the pillars is toppled, and so we know Slaanesh is probably going to break free. And then this, I'm trying to get a good look here. So this one's kind of a city waterscape. Looks like it could be an eel here in the bottom right, or it could be something like Malarian's elves or Scourge privateers getting their own thing. There's a lot of different ways to go with that one. That one's a little bit more kind of generic fantasy art, but I love it. I love the sea. Side note, does anyone know how Games Workshop gets this art? Like, do they have special artists on staff? Because I would love to interview one of those. It blows my mind. Anyway, back to the lore blurb. The elven gods are rising up to challenge the might of chaos and the elven gods specifically. So we're talking about the ones that are all involved with taking souls. So that's going to be Malarian, Teclis, Tyrion, Morathi, and Alariel is an elven god as well, but she's not involved in that part. To challenge the might of chaos and the growing power of death. But like Sigmar's pantheon before them, they are riven by mistrust and each pursues their own goals and schemes. Teclis, ever aloof and arrogant, seeks to single-handedly save the mortal realms. That's just like him. What a turd. Alariel, fickle as the seasons, turns on allies as well as enemies, attacking explorers and settlers across Ghiran. And as for Morathi, well, she has a very definite goal in mind: godhood. True to form, she doesn't intend to let anything stand in her way. This new conflict will touch every corner of the mortal realms and affect every faction. That's a huge thing. Treachery and torment, siege and slaughter. Bloodshed and battle. All this and more awaits you in a series of epic narrative books. Thank you. On a scale not seen since the Realmgate Wars. That is the most exciting damn thing I've ever heard. Okay, I'm done. As well as a truly massive stories, these books will be packed with new rules for loads of factions, thrilling battle plans, and much more. So then we scroll down and we see what looks like, based on what I know about the size of the books and like the logo and that kind of stuff, a fairly meaty book simply called Age of Sigmar Broken Realms, and this is Morathi. And so, I mean, based on their descriptions, I would not be surprised if this was a series that was like it picked characters who were kind of like important to a certain arc. But they don't necessarily all have to be the elves. Like I don't see anything here that makes it think it has to be like Morathi, Teclis, Tyrion, you know what I mean, and that kind of stuff. It could definitely be, Morathi, Catacross, whatever, as long as their events are tying into this bigger narrative. But it's starting with Morathi, which I'm excited about. So this new era-defining narrative all kicks off with Broken Realms Morathi. Whatever army you play, and whomever your allegiance lies with, prepare for war as the Daughters of Cain come into conflict with not only the forces of chaos, but former allies, both elven and clad in Sigmarite. So, that is the news reveal. As I said before, what I do is I read the news as it is, and then I'm going to go back and kind of give my personal thoughts and reviews. And we're going to start with the Warcry one. I mean, I kind of already said the things I wanted to say about the 40k stuff as far as like discussing how it might cross over to AOS and that kind of stuff. But we're going to talk about the Warcry stuff. So I'm going to give it a hot pause here for a second. If you have any thoughts on the Warcry thing, go ahead and type it in now. If you could put like Doug or 2+ Tough or question or whatever, just so I can see it a little bit easier. There's a lot of y'all. Christopher says, Doug, regarding artists, there's an interview on the Stormcast with a woman who did artwork for Carriage and Overlords. Oh, I want to go watch that. I missed that one. Thanks for being positive, Doug. I'm definitely sick of trash garbage, but I wanted this. Yeah, no, I'm excited, man. Like, there are some things, when we get to specifically the Underworlds part, I'm just like, what? But I mean, for the most part, very, very positive. I can't tell you how positive I am. It's not what I was expecting, but I didn't know I wanted it. Thanks, G-Dub, for knowing me. I say it to my wife all the time, like, oh man, you know me so well, I didn't even know that I wanted this. All right, so it looks like I don't see anything in the chat. All right, sweet. So we're going to start my review here. Warcry. is it Catacombs? Warcry Catacombs. Okay. Nighthawk McAwesome says, Doug, my Direchasm is rashy. Definitely go to a doctor. Try Benadryl once, and if it doesn't make the rash go away, go to a doctor immediately. So, Warcry Catacombs is an interesting set. I'm very excited for when they show us the contents, like they outline very specifically what it is. What I'm seeing so far is you get 2 new warbands, both of which are incredible and in high demand. I want these Scions of the Flame. Like, I don't dislike the Khainite ones. It's just not my aesthetic. You know what I mean? Like, they are intensely good models. The guy throwing shade is my hero. He's my spirit animal. But everybody else, I'm like, it's the reason I'm not in Daughters of Cain as a faction. That and the price point of Witch Elves. It is what it is. But the Scions of the Flame, guys, I'm just like, my goodness, this is getting ridiculous. This is so cool. Absolutely love them. Now, as far as my thoughts on like the formats, I cannot tell you enough. I really do want the dungeon rules to kind of, to supplement the core of the game in a way that people were looking for. And by that I mean, tighten up the rule set a bit, add some more complexity to it so that we can do different things. And when I say complexity is not good for complexity's sake. I don't want it to be Necromunda. What I mean is, when you put in more rules, you allow players to articulate different narrative things that are happening. So before I used the example of, I want rules for what happens when someone goes on fire. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Well, this is a perfect time to have those kinds of rules. More rules for movement or, just stuff like that. I don't know how else to describe it, but just give me ways to articulate cool narrative things that these warbands can do. What does poison look like? I know there's an ability called poison for the snake dudes, but you know what I mean? Like, I just want more, and I think that's kind of the consensus amongst a lot of players. As Nick R says, I'm beyond excited for the new Warcry set. Having little kids makes playing AOS hard, so having something new to play in 40 minutes makes me excited. Exactly. And that's the thing where it's like, I like the tactical thinking of Underworlds. Like, it's a very tactical game, and I very much enjoy it. When they say it's the ultimate competitive miniatures game, I can see it. I can see it enough to be like, it certainly should be in the running. It's a great game. I just don't like the deck building. When it comes to Warcry, I'm like, all the things that I love about Underworlds pretty much cross over except for the complexity level, where it's like, I want some cool new abilities and that kind of stuff. But the core engine of just a handful of models, very simple rules, easy to learn, hard to master, it's awesome. It's just awesome, guys. I love it. So I'm very excited about this. I honestly forgot that I had the fat Fulmoroid Crusher guy. He's right behind me. I love that model so much. So I'm excited to use him. And I want to do battle reports and that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of hunting for a camera right now. But I definitely want to do this kind of stuff. This looks absolutely stellar. The fact that one thing that does kind of interest me, and we'll talk about Kill Team here again as a comparison, because I think they're pretty comparable in terms of what they do for the main game of getting people in and then you can expand. I'm curious if in the next edition of Age of Sigmar, whenever 3rd comes out, it's not so much a rewrite of the game, like 1st to 2nd had some huge changes. You know what I mean? And I mean like literal 1st edition of Age of Sigmar, not all the FAQs combined. I mean, the 1st edition Age of Sigmar to the 2nd was a big difference. And I wonder if our 3rd edition is going to be more of a fine tuning. And the reason I bring up Age of Sigmar is when they redid 40K, they changed the table sizes to reflect 2 Kill Team boards put next to each other. Okay, they moved away from the 4x6 standard. Now, first of all, I love that because who the hell has a 4x6 just laying around. Like the vast overwhelming majority of people in this hobby, I imagine, do not. But I wonder if they're going to do that to AOS, because now they're introducing more and more boards and table formats and that kind of stuff for Warcry, which does use that exact same size. And so that is very exciting to me. So possibly smaller table sizes. That's just conjecture, though. Cannot stress that enough. But it makes me think about the future of Age of Sigmar and these guys. And I think they're so cool. Do you think the Dark Elves will be sold separately from the set? Yes, I do. They probably will not be sold separately immediately. Like, they're probably going to be exclusive to the Catacombs box for like 3-4 months, and then they'll come out separately. That's what they did with the Iron Golems and Untamed Beasts. You can buy those separately from the total set. Drew says, totally agree. I play 40k in AOS, and I do not feel like the 3rd edition needs to see the sweeping changes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. You can just tune it up a little bit, maybe make some minor tweaks here and there. But if you're going to make the new edition, have it be a much larger focus on just making it, kind of getting all of your different game formats in sync so that you have a clear path for purchases and expansions and that kind of stuff. And this Warcry set fits into that so well. What I want to know is when they're just going to get rid of the super heinous, ugly Marauder sculpts and just say, take your freaking Warcry warband. Just take 40 of them, just throw them on the table. They're Marauders now. That would be so cool. And the only Warcry warband that I want to see that we don't have like an aesthetic for yet is I want to see something that kind of leans/hints towards Nurgle-y. And the Corvus Cabal does that a little bit because they're all covered in gore and they offer up rotten meat to their god or whatever that. But overall, about this set, very excited. I just want it. I want it like yesterday. I want to know everything about these dungeon rules. Yeah, that's basically all I got. So moving into the Underworlds, this is the only part of this entire video where I have something remotely negative to say. And it's not a trash garbage thing, as Jack pointed out. Here's my thoughts. I'll start with the negative. This way I can end on a abusively positive. The negative is they're giving us a Lumineth Realmlord warband. Now, as someone who I'm always looking for lore for the Warhammer Underworlds warbands, because people do like those, they want to learn about their models they're playing with, even if they're not AOS people. They got into Underworlds like, what is Zigsnack or whatever the Grot's name is, whatever. Now, they released the Lumineth Realmlord Battle Tome. It's sitting right next to me. There is no mention, there is no lore about these guys. And I just look at that, I'm like, why couldn't you just put them in the book? Like, I want to know about them. I would love to have a video made and ready for when this goes on pre-order to be like, guys, look how cool this is. And now it just makes that Battle Tome feel slightly incomplete. And I'm like, meh. And honestly, that is it for my negativity. Like, it's just that, hey, this book just got released, and now, before the whole faction's even out, there's more Lumineth Realmlord models that we don't have in our book. And it wouldn't bother me so much, except that the Lumineth Realmlord book has already so few units in it. This is like, oh, you could have just given me one more. You had one more, and you just didn't give it to me. That being said, sorry, I was reading the comments, making sure nothing went wrong. So the only thing is, that's my only gripe. The poses and the models, they got some Alarith and some Cathar looking guys in there. I think that is awesome. Would certainly love alternate sculpts for stuff like the Cathar, because it's just that one with the lady who's like, in a windstorm, which is an unrecommended pose to be in. I would love to see like him used as an alternate one of those, all that kind of stuff. I love it. In fact, the Lumineth Realmlord lore sets it up to have the most diverse and interesting warbands, whether that's for Warcry or Underworlds, because, for example, The Alarith, who are the stone guys who have the big bull iconography, they are like a subsection of that army, and the book was designed to where they can just kind of bolt on different subsections. So like, we focus on mountains and rocks, is the bull guys, and then we focus on rivers and water, says this other cast of their society. So like, I think Lumineth Realmlords have some cool stuff coming down the pipeline. It just seems so strange that they're off here on the side and I can't learn about them in my book that I just got. Like, that sucks. And that's it. That's my negative thing. And it still has a lot of positivity in there, right? Because it's still all about how great these models are. I think they're going to be awesome. Just knowing what I know of Underworlds, and I've played Underworlds quite a bit because I've been doing the online version. I think if they kind of go with a flavorful thing of, they can deliver a punch but can't necessarily take one. However, that is kind of offset by the Alarith, who are kind of the polar opposite. They don't do a ton of damage, but they're the tanky elves kind of a thing. They could be a really fun warband. And that is it for that is the most negative I will get in this video, which is not very negative at all. And talk about the other side, which is Mortal Slaanesh is now officially a warband. They got a named character who's going to be in leading of that. They don't have like a great picture of anything like that, but from the box art we can see right here, we see at least 2 mortals. One has a turquoise mohawk in the back, which just looks metal. It looks like something out of Necromunda. And then there is a Slongor, which, if you don't know what that is, basically they used to have Beasts of Chaos that were devoted to each of the Chaos gods, and now you can do that with the use of a battalion from the Beasts of Chaos book, but there used to be like Pestigors, which were Nurgle Gors. There were, is it Korngors? Is that what they were? Someone in the chat. And then Slongor were obviously Slaanesh, that kind of stuff. Zangors were for Tzeentch. And Zangors were the only ones that got a renewed model. In terms of like, this is a specific Zangor type thing. There's no specific anything else, Korngor, Pestigor, whatever. So I'm very excited for that. And I really do hope that the sales for this set tell them like, hey, this is a thing we want to buy. Like, I would love a unit of Pestigor. That would be so freaking cool. Yeah. Anyway, that's all my thoughts for that one. And again, the Slaanesh mortal stuff, I could not be more excited for it. I think that is the element that is missing for that army to become interesting to me. Because I was actually thinking about the other day, how come I like Khorne, Nurgle, and Tzeentch so much, and I've played all of them. As far as factions go, I haven't. I played Khorne like my buddy. I painted up his stuff. I never owned my own Khorne army, but I'm like, how come those appeal to me so much, but like Slaanesh just never has? And the reason is I just like the mortal elements of stuff. I don't get into the demons as much, and so the fact that book is, in relation to the other Chaos armies, half a battle tome, and in terms of like, there's no strong mortal half presence in terms of the models. Obviously, you can use Slaves to Darkness and all those kinds of things. You can totally make a mortal Slaanesh army. But in terms of model support, they felt very different, and it just didn't appeal to me personally. And so seeing those models kind of on the horizon is freaking dope. I don't have much to say about the Underworld skink other than GW's listening. If you guys want new Seraphon models, they're on the way. At least a warband's worth. I can't say anything about anything else, but I like the idea of them using Warcry and Underworlds to kind of supplement interesting alternate sculpts and that kind of stuff into main factions. Like, obviously I don't want to see a unit of 30 of this exact same dude, right? Like a grove of 30 half stumps with skinks on them looks boring, but being able to splash in a sculpt here and there to various units is really cool. For example, like the Orc Brutes, I made a joke that it really is just 3 Ironjaw Brutes who look like they're waiting for the bus is the Underworld's warband. But those, when you splash those in to the existing Brute kit where they're all just standing flat-footed on the ground, it brings that unit as a whole now to life, and I like that. I like that quite a bit. And the supplement for it, the Arena of Death, it sounds cool. It would require me to find at least 2 more people who play Underworlds, and that's been hard to do. Because locally, I've gotten games in, but it was only ever like 1 guy. So it's kind of interesting. Let's see. What's cool is they have a whole bunch of stuff. It's like a supplement that has a whole lot going on in it. So if you play Underworlds, I'm really happy for you. Now, Shadow and Pain. I have thoughts and feelings. So I'll pull this up. This is their latest 2-army box set. It is, of course, Daughters of Cain and Slaanesh. I believe it is very, very clear that we are going to be getting a new Daughters of Cain army book, battle tome. That is what it's called. I knew that. I'm curious about some of this stuff you see in the background. Like, that is a big spike with a very specific aesthetic going to it. I don't know what that's from. If anyone knows, let me know. But I would love to see some endless prayer or spells, because they have spellcasters in Daughters of Cain, for them. And the fact, people will complain that, how do I word this? I have seen people complain with these 2 army box sets that the only new models are heroes, right? That essentially, if you already own a full collection of, say, Daughters of Cain, the only reason you would buy this box is for that specific hero. And on one hand, I get that. I want them to do better about putting out those heroes in a much more timely fashion, rather than waiting to the end of the year and then dumping them all at once, which is what they did last year. And I really hope that they do that. Because I can't... This is, to my knowledge, the first box that's come out since they did that, unless I'm missing something. The fact that there's a strong... So, a buddy, and I won't call him out because I don't know if he wants to, but made a joke that, Games Workshop just really, really cannot let go of their Witch Elf models for less than $60. Because in this set, you get, obviously, the 2 sets of the Melusai models and the Kineri, which are all not Witch Elves. My dearest hope is that means the army is moving away from being a horde army of Witch Elves that just runs forward, and maybe we'll actually see some of these really stinking cool models. Ether War, thank you so much. Yeah, Ether War did come out, because then right after that they dropped all the heroes. Yeah, thank you. So that's an interesting one. I'm pretty sure they're getting a new battle tome. I just don't like that the Witch Elves are $60 for 10 girls in a horde unit. I can't. However, if they made it in such a way where the army was more internally balanced, where the snakes and the snake ladies and the Kineri had a lot more function and they did more, I would be in like Flynn. So I love it. No, we need more Witch Elves. Well, I'm fine with the Witch Elf kit and the model. I love them. They're great. It's just $60 for 10 in a unit. It's just like, bleh. No, I mean, it's one of those things that Daughters of Cain is one of those armies. It's kind of like Skaven, where it's like, there are so many reasons to love it, but the actual things that a human being has to do and buy, and the amount of money you have to spend to have a basic playing experience with them is so weird and out of funk that I don't like it. I don't like the $60 kit for basic infantry, and I don't know. Anyway, over on the Slaanesh side, obviously that hero is baller. I can pretty confidently say that this means that the Hellstrider kits are not going away, which, I think they look better than Marauders, but they still got that same kind of chunky boy beef rider look to them. I'm crazy about the new Mortal Slaanesh stuff, and we'll talk more about that here in a second. But overall, I'm not going to be buying this set, but like I said before, putting a bounty out there, if I want to know the lore from it, for sure. Like, I have no reason to buy this. I have no interest in either faction. But I would absolutely love to read about it. So, all right. We're going to talk Broken Realms. Broken Realms, what I was expecting when I heard that was something with a destruction focus. I did not imagine a series that focused on, or at least kicked off with, the Elven Pantheon. However, this is a huge note. Chunky Boy Beef Rider, yeah, that's the Hellstriders of Slaanesh. Go check them out. They look like the old Marauder models. I cannot overstate enough how important the Elven story arc is tangential. Like me, it's happening on the side of the main plot line of Age of Sigmar, but it just matters so much. And what I'm assuming is, in this book, just based on the art, Morathi is going to try and make some form of power play to obtain godhood. Now, I just put out a video recently saying I want them to define what godhood means, simply because it's sort of like a vague thing. It's a very vague thing. So show me what it is, show me what she's trying to attain, and who she's willing to step on to attain it, right? Like, that is, to me, the crux of what this story, or what these three pictures are showing me. One thing that's interesting, Victor, we'll get there, buddy. So one thing that's interesting to me is, like, the first image they show is Morathi Ascendant in her snake form in front of outsiders, which she never wants to do. She always wants to keep the illusion that she's a chill elf. And the outsiders are, of course, Deepkin, who I want to know exactly why she wants to fight them. That sounds awesome. I'm so on board. I don't know where they're going with the story, like, as far as what they want to do with Daughters of Cain. Like, I can't fathom that they're going to be, like, established enemies of Stormcast, but still be Order. I don't know, because I feel like Order stuff, it makes sense for them to clash every once in a while internally, but to be, like, a full-on backstabber of multiple factions, like, I don't know, that seems real rough. So, all that to say, I'm just along for the ride, y'all. Like, I'm very excited. I'm so excited. In fact, I would be happy if, like, I don't know, the Elven Pantheon of gods, like those, because there are very specific Elven gods, they formed their own, for lack of a better word, Grand Alliance. You know what I mean? Where, like, yeah, there are still Daughters of Cain in cities, but also you can fight under the banner of Morathi herself as a Daughter of Cain unit, or you can do it under, you know, this new pantheon of, like, elves is back, baby, kind of a thing. I think that'd be really interesting. So, I don't know. This is one of those scenarios where I encourage people very, very strongly to just sit back with no expectations and let Games Workshop take us on a journey, right? You're going to have people who are Daughters of Cain players and are going to be upset about the book doesn't do what they want, and there's going to be a whole new list of units that are OP or garbage. However, I would just submit to you that it is far more fun in this hobby to just kind of, like, sit back with a beer in your hand and be like, all right, GW, show me something cool. And then when you do that and you see artwork like this crap, like, what? This is the coolest thing ever. In the background, there's a Cain statue and his arms breaking off. That's so cool. Anyway, moving on to the next picture. I do believe that Slaanesh will be getting a new battle tome as well. And this is kind of what makes me think this box set is probably closer to 2 to 3 months out. I think it's not crazy to say that both of these factions will get new models. The Slaanesh side will probably get mortal stuff, but it's not that old of a battle tome. I don't know. Let me think on that one. Because it's a fairly new one, isn't it? I mean, that's not true. It's not fairly new. I just have no concept of time because of COVID. Anyway, Slaanesh breaking free from the chains, I think, would be a fantastic narrative arc. For sure. Absolutely. Actually, I want to pick up this picture. I love this picture where it has Slaanesh. I like that they've added a lot more form to that picture. Because if you remember the one before, it kind of had the same generic outline, but it was much more shadowy and there wasn't really a good, clearer picture. Whereas this one with the horns and the claw, I think it looks so cool. To give you all a brief sum up, during Wrath the Everchosen, Archaon found Slaanesh, was actively breaking him loose, and then got basically pulled away because Catacross was attacking the 8 points. And the elves were left with Slaanesh there, and we don't know anything after that. So it could have been, they tried to put the prison back together, but they failed and now Slaanesh is free. It could be that they moved Slaanesh, but the new location wasn't as secure, something like that. It's going to be, I'm assuming, a big narrative, obviously involving the elves, the elven races that specifically took souls from Slaanesh, and he's mad and hangry, if you will, along with a rise in Slaanesh's return, like, Slaanesh armies coming back in style. And then there's this third picture, which everyone and their mom has spammed me pictures of, talking about vampirates and how vampirates are something that people have always wanted. Vampire pirates, for those not in the lingo. You know what? There are so many things that this picture could be. This is another example of, I'm just going to sit back and be surprised. Because if you want vampirates, and when this comes out and they're like, Scourge Privateers, the full battle tome with all these amazing models that'll blow your mind hole, but it's not what you wanted, people get salty for no reason. So there's that. Anyway, Morathi Chaos God? Nope. She's not a god at all right now, and she works for Order. She's just a slippery little devil. Yeah, and that's basically it. So a few final thoughts here, and I'll just leave this picture on this. I'm so excited to be out of the Soul Wars. I felt like Shyish had become stale as a setting. I personally wanted Gur to be the next kind of focal point, but it looks like they're not going realm by realm, but more by story arc by story arc. So this is the story arc of Morathi trying to become a god, is what I'm assuming. Based upon the fact that it's a Morathi book, and she's got this picture of art with her looking all amazing. So I'm excited about that. They likened this to the Realm Gate Wars, right? An epic narrative book series not seen on this scale since the Realm Gate Wars. Friends, last week I ordered the entire Realm Gate War series, the big thick campaign books, because I wanted to go into them in more detail. For the video reviews I did them, I borrowed them from my friend, but now I actually want to own them. And the idea of a whole series like that, it just makes me so happy. And the reason I say that is because when the Realm Gate War series came out, where there was that much support and art and great battle plans and fun stuff, but it came out at the worst conceivable time for Age of Sigmar, when there was no points and public opinion was at its lowest and people were really mad and actively harassing folks who enjoyed AOS. It was just the wrong time for that. You know what I mean? And so those books went underappreciated in their time. Whereas now that the game is much more established and has a fan base and I would say much more concrete lore, I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is exactly what I wanted. This is what I wanted, first of all, when the Realm Gate Wars came out, and I was so excited then, and now it's what I want again. And so, yeah, I'm excited. I don't know what's going to be in this book as far as comparing it to, say, like Wrath of the Everchosen. Where Wrath of the Everchosen was a very specific story, Catacross trying to walk up and punch Archaon, and to support that, there was a whole bunch of really cool battle plans and obviously sub-factions. I used the Nurgle ones from that book. So I don't know what, in terms of like the actual game support, it could be anything. I think it's pretty clear there's going to be a story, and where there's a story, there's going to be battle plans to reenact it. So that's rad. But as far as stuff like sub-factions or, playing in specific realms, that kind of stuff, I have no idea. But I'm open for anything. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I did not expect them. So I guess kind of closing out my thoughts here. And if you guys have any final thoughts, throw them in the chat. Be sure to @ me or write question or something like that so I can see it. But I was not expecting this, but I am so freaking excited. And the reason is I love campaigns. I love narrative. These kinds of books deliver that. And the characters that they chose, at least the ones that they've mentioned up in the blurb above the Morathi picture, are the exact narrative threads that I think are some of the most compelling, where someone's trying to achieve godhood. Okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? So that question has to be answered in the course of this book. That's awesome. In addition to that, they have Teclis, who is trying to do his own thing without anyone's help and fix the mortal realms because he's arrogant enough to think that he can do that, which is honestly still Nagash's problem. He thought he was arrogant enough to think, I can figure all this out and just rule it all. Teclis is a turd. He's awesome, but he's a turd in that way. And so that's an interesting arc of like, that puts him at odds with so many factions that are order-based because he doesn't want their help. He doesn't want their permission to do what he has to do. And if he sees a city of Sigmar in the way of his goal, he'll level it because it's for the greater good in his mind, right? The ends justify the means. And I'm the only person that understands the ends. Like, that arc is cool. Alariel, fickle as the seasons, turns on allies as well as enemies. One of the things that I've loved about learning about the battles in Ghyran and that kind of stuff is that Alariel, her first allegiance is to life and the realms, not to each other, in terms of like friendships and bonds and that kind of stuff. So as cities grow and they keep using natural resources and the chaos gods destroy and level forests and rivers and that kind of stuff, she gets mad. And I always thought it was kind of weak that Alariel, she came back in her war aspect during the Realmgate Wars. It was super cool. Love her model. She came out and was immediately like a team player with Sigmar. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of tension there between them when it's like, no, they have very different goals. They have very different pursuits. And I hope that this really highlights that. It makes her a more interesting character, And I'm not sure how I'm going to say smart the use of the word fickle in describing one of the few strong female characters in this season, in this game is, but I wouldn't do it, but that's what they did, and that's cool. That's cool. I feel like they could have just as easily put in parentheses next to it, women, that kind of stuff. It's a joke. I'm just making a joke, but it just seems like a funny thing because just based upon what we know about Alariel, fickle's not a word I would use. I mean, she has intense motions and she does change with the seasons, but fickle to me is more like, I'm going to help you. Actually, I don't know if I want to help you. I don't know. Just kind of being a pain in the butt. Whereas like, no, man. When she was ready to fight, she was like all in. She was like, we're doing this. Leroy Jenkins style. So I think it's really cool. To be perfectly honest, I'm excited. It's not what I expected, but it's what I'm on board for. So fickle is the perfect adjective for a creature who changes with the seasons. Fair enough. And she's got her own seasons. I think there's like 16 or 32 seasons going on. Anyway, but I wanted to end on that. I just love this picture. I might turn this into my background. Anyway, friends, thank you all so much for joining me. Does fickle sound more childish in your ears? Yeah, it kind of does. Maybe that's it. It sounds bratty, right? Like you're calling someone a brat, not... I think you're reading into this too much. It was a joke. Yeah, absolutely I was. That was part of it. Anyway, so friends, Mercurial would have said the same thing but sounded better. That's funny. Yeah, absolutely I am. It was a total joke. Anyway, so I'm excited about stuff. Let's see. Yeah, beautiful image to end on. All right, so I'll go ahead and close it out. Thank you all so much for joining me for this preview review. And we'll talk about these things more as they come, of course, and there's going to be lore videos to support every single one of the books or whatever that is released. So, friends, thank you all so much for hanging out with me and getting excited about this stuff. Tell me down